What's up everybody, OT for Tech here, and this is the Samsung Galaxy S5 LTE-A Prime. This is a Korean exclusive, but I'm here with you today for the full unboxing and review. This is not to be confused with the Galaxy F coming later this year, but it features the same specs. It has that Qhd display, it has the Snapdragon 805 quad-core processor clocked at 2.5 GHz, and it has the Adreno 420 with 3 GB of RAM. My supplier over in Korea also included a American adapter to go over the international charger, as well as a case, which is the same style case they included in their G3. The link to their store will be in the description below, so make sure you check them out for all your international phone needs. To be specific, this is actually the South Korean telecom model, so if you were looking for this particular phone, just make sure you tell them you want the telecom model. So without further ado, let's see what we got in the box. The first thing you're greeted with is the Galaxy S5 Prime. Underneath that, you have some paperwork and literature on the Galaxy S5. You have a charger to charge your second battery, which 2 batteries are included, both 2800 milliamp. You also have a data cable and you have a charger, and you also get a pair of headphones. So let's go ahead and take a closer look at that backup charger that they include for your second battery. You can see right there it has your micro USB 2.0 charging port to plug in that data cable in order to charge it, and you see that it also has a door, so it's like a chamber style charging dock. So let's go ahead and take a closer look at the charger itself, and of course it is an international charger, and as you see it does not feature USB 3.0 charging, which is very strange because the American model S5 features USB 3.0, and if you take a look at the data cable, the same goes for it as well. There's no USB 3.0 on that. So let's go ahead and pop in my SIM card, and by the way, it still does take the micro SIM cards just like the Galaxy S5 does, and we'll go ahead and slide in the battery. Before I pop on the back, I want to show you it still does have that little ring that goes around the interior part of the rear of the case to give you some waterproof protection, so it's maintaining that IP67 rating that the Galaxy S5 was known for. Before we power it on, let's just go ahead and take a look around and compare it to the American model Galaxy S5. And as you see, when it comes to that rear panel or the removable backplate, it's almost identical. The only difference is where it says Galaxy S5 on the American model, it says Samsung, and the Samsung is actually protruding a little bit. So it's more, instead of an engraving, it sticks out. And although the data cable and the charger do not have it, you can see it does have USB 3.0 charging on the bottom of the S5 Prime. The only notable difference between these two phones in terms of design is the accent color. The black American model features a silver accent color, while the Korean model Prime offers a gold accent color. And this continues onto the rear of the phone where you see the camera accent as well as the accent that goes around the flash and heart rate monitor. The Korean model is gold while the American is still silver. To be honest, I was a little bit let down because I was expecting to receive the diamond pattern that everybody kept talking about that was going to be released with the back panel of the Galaxy S5 Prime. But the model that I received did not feature this, so I'm not sure if it's just a rumor or if it's just my particular model that didn't receive it. Anyways guys, let's go ahead and boot up the phone for the first time, and as you see, it's just your typical Samsung setup process. And for those that don't believe me that this is the S5 Prime, you can see the model number right there. You can see it's also running Android 4.4.2 KitKat, so it's running the latest version of Android for Samsung products at least. One of the things I really love about having these imported phones is the fact that you can pretty much disable or uninstall any of the carrier bloatware. This also goes for the G3, so we're going to go ahead and do a quick demonstration of that. As we swipe over, you can see some of that T-branded carrier bloatware, and we're just going to disable it. It removes it from your app drawer, so it cleans up your apps and it just makes it look much more tidy, and you don't have to worry about all that nonsense stuff that you're never going to use. You can hide it, you can disable it, and you can uninstall it and just remove it out of your life. In terms of software, there's a few differences between the S5 Prime and the S5 American Edition, and I'm going to go ahead and show you those differences. So let's start with the camera app. When first opening up the camera app, you're not going to notice any difference whatsoever, but if you go into the mode setting and go all the way down on the S5 Prime, you're going to have a manage mode setting, and this is going to be able to enable and disable different shooting modes so you don't have a bunch cluttering up. You can get rid of the ones that you're not going to use. Going into the settings portion of the camera app, you can see you have an additional shooting mode when it comes to video. You can now shoot in 2560 by 1440, which is Quad HD. You cannot do this on the American model. You can only do 4K UHD. This is due to the fact that the Galaxy S5 has that Quad HD display built into it. But if you load up the actual picture settings themselves, you're going to notice that the S5 Prime shoots at 8.9 megapixels, while the American model S5 shoots at 9 megapixels. Not that much of a difference, but it's still worth noting that there is a slight little bit of a different setting there. Pulling down from your status bar revealing the notification center, you can see on the S5 Prime you have the S Finder and Quick Connect settings blatantly put out right in front of you. You don't have to dig for them. Going into the settings themselves, you're not going to find too many differences, but one of those differences is download booster. This is not featured in the American models. This is not new to the S5 Prime. It is on the S5, but only the Korean models and the international models at this time. The next setting that I came across that was different on the Prime versus the American S5 is the festival effect. What the festival effect does is when it's a specific holiday such as Valentine's Day or New Year's, on your home screen and your lock screen and your notification panel, you might see balloons and hearts or fireworks depending on what holiday that you're actually on. Not really the most useful feature, but nonetheless it is an added feature in the international and Korean versions versus the S5 American edition. I also noticed on the American edition that it is called the calendar versus the Korean model where it's called S Planner. Again, it's not much, but still it is a difference and it's something that I noticed. One thing I had a problem with the Prime is updating the software. It's asking me to put in the SIM card that this phone is actually designated to be used on or with. If you guys know of a workaround, please let me know in the comment section below. When I first got the phone and put in my SIM card, I was only able to receive 3G or HSPA Plus on the AT&T network, as you see here. But with a little alteration with the APN and entering my little code here, which is *0011 and pound, going down to the little menu on the bottom, which is written in Korean, and then changing the actual band frequency from the one set to automatic. Then getting out of that and resetting your phone, I was able to get onto AT&T's LTE network. And just to validate it, I'm going to go ahead and enter the code again, *0011 and you can see here I am connected to LTE. And you can see it says AT&T and I'm running on the LTE mobile network type, so I was able to access it after a few minor alterations. Now this also includes the use of download booster. I was able to turn it on and I was able to use it safely and correctly on AT&T's network. And let me tell you, it's amazing what this thing can do. Here's a quick demonstration with download booster running on LTE. And you can see here I am getting some excellent upload speeds and I got excellent download speeds. But let me show you the history of what I've done. I've run 4 tests and I'm going to show you those real quick. So if you take a look at the top two, the very first one is running just on HSPA Plus, while the next one is running HSPA Plus with download booster. So it's a combination between the network and the Wi-Fi setting, and the last two are LTE and download booster. And you can see it is running excellent and I'm getting excellent data speeds. In terms of specs, the Galaxy S5 Prime is running the highest end specs on the market for a mobile phone to date. And I was expecting a major blowout when it came to the S5 versus the S5 Prime, but it really wasn't. I mean, the S5 Prime definitely outperformed, but it wasn't a major shutdown. In fact, when running the Geekbench Manhattan and T-Rex tests, the S5 outperformed the S5 Prime in terms of frame rates. But I would take these results with a grain of salt, as I don't think that there's a lot of apps optimized for these high-end specs at this point. Therefore, later on in the future, when more and more phones start getting released with these specs and the 805 and the Adreno 420, I believe we'll start seeing an increase in performance due to more apps that are optimized to support that kind of hardware. And as you just saw, the S5 Prime definitely loaded up Dead Trigger 2 much quicker than the American S5. But here's where the twisting point comes into effect. We're going to go ahead and tap play at the same exact time, and the S5 actually gets to the screen where you can start playing much faster than the S5 Prime. Again, I think this has a lot to do with app optimization, since this app is not built to run on the Adreno 420 just yet. And here's a quick example of what I mean. We're going to try to load up Into the Dead at the same time on the American and the Prime, and you can see the American S5 is loading it up with no problem while the Prime just shuts down. This is all based upon app optimization, and this app isn't optimized to run on the specs on the S5 just yet. So let's go ahead and see how the S5 and the S5 Prime compare in terms of screen quality. Of course, the S5 Prime is sporting the 1440 by 2560 Quad HD display, while the S5 American Edition is sporting the 1080 by 1920 1080p display. The Prime has 565 pixels per square inch, while the S5 features 441 pixels per inch. So you can see there's a major resolution difference between these two phones. But what does that mean? Does it mean anything? To me, no. And you're going to see why in just a moment. But first, let's go ahead and run a quick test to determine how many megapixels per second each display can do. And as you see, the S5 Prime almost doubles that of the actual American S5. Now what this means, I'm not really sure. I'm not a screen pro, but I know that the display on the S5 Prime is much better than the S5. Here's a quick look at a Qhd Wallpaper, and you can see side by side, you can't really see a difference with the naked eye. Unless you're right up close to the screen, which you shouldn't be because it's bad for your eyes, you're not going to notice a difference whatsoever. What I mean by the Galaxy S5 has a much better display isn't based upon overall quality, because when it comes to overall quality, you're not going to really notice a difference, as you see here in a few of these pictures. But when it comes to small artifacts, you will see much more detail in the S5 Prime than you do in the American S5 or the basic S5. But that display comes with a cost. They're still both Super AMOLED displays, and the S5 Prime is the first Quad HD Super AMOLED display on a mobile phone. But the S5 Prime screen is much more warmer than the basic S5. So this tends to affect color replication significantly when dealing with white colors. And you're going to notice that in these pictures. You can see here the S5 Prime has much deeper greens as well versus the regular panel on the S5. This is a consistent pattern. Even here you can see the S5 Prime's blue replication is much deeper and much more saturated than it is on the regular S5 panel. And it continues here, and this is where you can see some of that warmth that I was talking about. The sun or the moon up there at the top shining on the lake is much more warmer colored than it is on the regular S5 panel. And it continues here. With all the whites, you can see it's much more orangish color, or it's not as white as the regular panel on the S5. Take a look at the clouds here, or the sky in the background. You can see it's much warmer again on the S5 Prime than it is on the basic panel on the S5. I'm not sure what is causing all this warmth or color replication to be off on the S5 Prime, but considering it has a Quad HD display, it should be significantly better than the basic panel or the 1080p panel on the S5. Here, there's not much of a difference. Both are showing extreme warm colors, and that's because of the redness and the orangeness in the sky. Here's another great example. If you take a look at the Google startup page on the Prime on the left versus the 1080p panel on the S5 on the right, you can see the S5 is much more cooler than it is on the Prime, which is much more warmer. But nevertheless, viewing angles on both of these devices are always excellent, so you don't have to worry about angled viewing whatsoever. At this time, the only benefit for Quad HD is dealing with smaller artifacts such as your icons and folders and things like that. Viewing text, you're really not going to notice a difference. After a certain PPI, your eyes really aren't trained to see a difference in crispness or sharpness. Just for the heck of it, I decided to compare it with the G3 screen. Here's a quick color comparison, and you can see the colors are a little bit darker on the G3. This is at max 100% brightness, and you can see the S5 Prime is a bit lighter, but the reds are more orange on the S5 Prime versus the reds on the G3. I am not experienced on banding whatsoever, but I wanted to go ahead and throw that in there for the experts out there so you can see what the difference is between the G3 and the S5 Prime. When it comes to black levels, of course, the Super AMOLED display is going to have much deeper blacks versus the IPS panel on the G3. But in comparison, the G3's whites are much better than the S5 Primes. Moving on to the black saturation test, you can see the Galaxy S5 Prime is definitely going to outperform the G3 on here, and that is thanks to the Super AMOLED display. That strange reflection on the G3 is actually not part of the test, nor is it a defect in the G3 screen. It's a reflection of my camera. When it comes to white levels, of course, I give it to the IPS display on the G3. When it comes to color accuracy, despite the extra warming that the S5 Prime does on the whiter colors, I have to give the color accuracy to the S5 Prime. The G3 just seems like the colors are much more oversaturated despite it having an IPS display. But let me reiterate the fact that I am not a professional when it comes to screen quality. I'll leave that to the pros like Erica to do the breakdown between the S5 Prime and the G3. This isn't really scientific testing, but more of a personal choice. And based off the pictures that we're viewing here, I have to give it to the S5 more than the G3. The colors just look much more accurate. Even though they are saturated still, they're not oversaturated like the G3. And you can actually see a little bit more detail in the QHD display on the S5 Prime. And I'm sure this has a lot to do with the fact that the S5 Prime is sporting a 5.2 inch display while the G3 is sporting a 5.5 inch display. Even here, look how dark the blue is on the G3 versus how more accurate it is on the S5 Prime. You get more detail in that accuracy. Again, here you can see much more detail and the color just looks much more smoother and better on the S5 Prime, especially the deep and dark blacks. Even when you take a look at this picture, I would rather take the overwarming effect of the Galaxy S5 Prime versus the yellowish effect of the G3. The next picture I have to give to the G3. The G3 has a much cooler screen versus the S5 Prime, and this is a very cool picture, and I think the G3 screen does it much more justice. On the next picture, you can see some of that oversaturation that the G3 does, and the fact that you lose a lot of the detail in the flowers with that oversaturation. So I have to give this one to the GS5 Prime. And for the final picture, you can see, again, I have to give it to the GS5 Prime. There's just a little bit more detail. If you look in the background in the cloud area and the shadows, you can just see a little bit more sharper of an image with the GS5 Prime. That was just merely a small comparison between the G3 and the S5 Prime. If you guys want to see a larger comparison, let me know in the comment section below and let me know what you want to see. In terms of battery life, that 2800 milliamp battery has been lasting me all day, and that's the same battery that's pumping out the 1080p display on the original S5, and this has a Quad HD display, and I think that's thanks to the Snapdragon 805 processor, which is much more energy efficient. Well guys, this has been my unboxing and initial assessment of the Galaxy S5 Prime. If you want me to do a full review, let me know in the comment section and let me know what you want out of the full review. I appreciate you guys for watching, so make sure you drop me a thumbs up, subscribe to my channel, follow me on all my social media networks, and of course, as always guys, thank you for watching and all your support.